Good morning again. We're back with cursive lesson number 1 for the letter A. Today we're going to do both capital and lowercase a. I just wanted to quickly remind you that when I say capital, I mean the big letter. Sometimes I might call it uppercase, and the lowercase letter a. So they look different in print. In cursive, they look very, very similar. They just take up a little bit different amount of space. So for today, you and I are going to use, I'm going to use 3 lines to be one space until we get really good at cursive, and then we can shrink it down a little bit. So if this is the top line, this is the base line, and then this is the midline. So I'm going to be using those terms. So this is the top line, the midline, and the base line. Sometimes letters have to stop and touch at certain points in cursive. So I want to make sure that we get the sizing correct. Once we can get the sizing correct between 3 of these lines, we'll shrink it down, like I said, and we'll get back down to just a single line, and you'll be pretty good at sizing the capital letters and then the lowercase letters, and then some of those lowercase letters that are nice and tall, like L's and K's. So you'll see as we go. All right, so for today's purposes, we're going to start, if this is the top line, this is the base line, this is the midline, I'm going to start with the lowercase a first. The lowercase a does not go above the midline or the middle of the open space. So if you think of a clock, and this is about where the 1 is on the clock, that's where the letter A starts. So you're going to hear me say things like start at 1 o'clock, start at 2 o'clock. Those are going to be references to help you understand where the letter starts when you create it, or maybe where it finishes, depending on the letter. There are some specific rules and guidelines for how to form these letters. So I want to make sure that you do it correctly, and then it'll make it so much easier when it's time to connect them to other letters, and they make it a lot easier to read them when you're writing and someone else is trying to read what you've written. All right, so if you can imagine 1 o'clock on a clock, that is where the start point for the letter A is. So you would start here and you're going to move counterclockwise. You're going to go to the left and come back around and get to that exact same starting point. And you'll notice that the letter is not a complete circle. It has sort of a flat edge over here, which is on purpose, because then we have to go ahead. Once we hit the starting point, we retrace that same line that you just did and finish up the letter A with a sweep at the end. So if it ends with a sweep, it often connects to all the other letters whenever it's time to connect them, okay? These are some of the words that I'm going to use to help you with cursive. So you're going to think about 1 o'clock, like 1 o'clock on a clock. That's where the starting point is. You're going to move counterclockwise, that's to the left. You're going to come back around with a general shape of maybe like an oval, a circle with a flat side on it, and then it will retrace and sweep at the end. So if I'm going to start with this in the right size, I would start here, switch to my red, I would start about here, and I would come up and touch the midline, touch the baseline, come back to the starting dot, retrace, and then sweep. So I'm going to do that a few times. 1 o'clock, around, baseline, touch, retrace, sweep. 1 o'clock, baseline, retrace, sweep. 1 o'clock, around, retrace, sweep. So as you can see, they're roughly the same size, they're roughly the same shape. Of course, I'm doing it slowly. So when I write it naturally, because I've had many years of practice, I don't usually go that slowly, and I don't usually say those things to myself, but because you and I are beginning together. So 1 o'clock, midline, baseline, retrace, sweep. 1 o'clock, midline, baseline, retrace, sweep. 1 o'clock, midline, baseline, retrace, sweep. So you can keep practicing this, replay this video over and over again. I'm also going to send you a link of a fun site that I found that has different manner. It's different than a human doing it. It's a little bit fun. So I'll send it to you and you can kind of do that. Another way that I like to do this is if you trace it in the air, if you do it with your finger and just sort of get your hand and your arm in practice of 1 o'clock, midline, baseline, retrace, then sweep. Okay, sometimes you just have to retrain your brain and retrain your hands. Okay, so for lefty-loos, here we go. I'm going to do this one in blue. Lefty-loo for blue. I don't know why that happened, but it just did. So I'm going to come on the other side of the easel. I'm still going to start at 1 o'clock. I'm going to sweep up to the midline, down to the baseline, hit my starting point, retrace, and sweep. Yep, that one's not so pretty at all, but it's okay. 1 o'clock, midline, baseline, touch the beginning, retrace, and sweep. So, lefties, I hope you got a chance to see that. I know my camera's off a little bit, but it's hard to find ways to prop up the camera around here. Anyway, so this is lesson number 1, letter A. Lowercase only right now. I'm going to erase this and then I'm going to switch to the uppercase, but you will notice that the shape of these two is very, very, very similar. It's just the size that changes. So the size of the capital A fills both spaces of the line, or the full space of the line, and it starts exactly the same way. I'm going to make it really big just so you can see. Again, that clock, it starts over here at 1 o'clock. Okay, I get my black so I can trace over it again. 1 o'clock, up to the top line, through the midline, down to the baseline, touch, retrace, and loop. Okay, so I've used a lot of lines to make that one. I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to show you if this is the top, this is the mid, this is the baseline. I'm going to squeeze a capital A in there for you. Over here I'm going to start at 1 o'clock. I'm going to sweep up to the top line. I'm going through the midline, down to the baseline, back up to my starting point, retrace, and sweep. Oops. Try not to have any gaps in there. Okay, so I'm going to do a few more for you, and I'll say the words as I go. Feel free to watch, and then you're welcome to practice. 1 o'clock, top, mid, base, starting point, retrace, sweep. 1 o'clock, top, mid, base, starting point, retrace, sweep. Top, mid, base, starting point, retrace, sweep. And that is the capital A. Same shape, same basic idea as the lowercase a. It's just, it fills more room, okay? So if you're doing this in one line, when we get to that point, the capital A, whoops, error, we're going to try that again. The capital A will fill the one space, and the lowercase a will only fill half of the space. So that's their relationship to each other, is full and half. All right, friends, I need to post this so you can get busy. So this is lesson number 1, capital A. Have fun. Next up is D, lowercase and capital D. Bye.